Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first Cost of Living Facebook Live of 2023, where each week we delve into all the latest money updates of the past week and bring you all the tips to make your cash stretch further. I'm Levi Winchester, the money editor for the Mirror website, and this week we're going to be discussing all the ways you can get through January. Always a very tough month financially, and I'm joined by the fabulous Myron Jobson, Senior Personal Finance Analyst at Interactive Investor. Thank you so much for joining us, Myron. It's really, really great to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Really good stuff. So yes, January is always a really tough month for your money. It follows a busy December and often a very expensive Christmas. And of course, the cost of living crisis means many families are feeling the squeeze more than ever right now. But the good thing about January is, if you're worried about your finances, the start of a new year can be the perfect time to go through your spending and start afresh. So what we're going to run through today is first how to cut your bills, then how to make the money you already have work harder, ways to make extra cash, and then all the help available if you are starting the new year in debt. So as always, if you'd like to ask us a question, please use the comments box below or email us at mirror.money.saving@mirror.co.uk. So it feels like just about all our bills are getting more expensive right now. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of those key bills one by one and discuss all the things you can do to lower them. So if we start with broadband and mobile, many broadband providers could be set to bring in huge increases from April of roughly 15%. This is all to do with how high inflation has been. So now is really a good time to take stock and check how much you are paying. So my first question to you, Myron, is if you suspect you're paying too much, what are the best ways for people to go about cutting their broadband and their mobile bill?
Yeah, I think the first step is to check exactly how much you're paying, and then the next step will be to actually go on different comparison websites to see if you can get a better deal. I think most of us join or go on broadband contracts based on introductory offers, offering maybe a couple of months free of broadband or discounted broadband rate. But these things have a shelf life. These introductory offers they go in a couple of months, and after that, we are left paying perhaps slightly more on full broadband costs. And so the key is, once your contract has run out, go and compare. You're more likely to get a cheaper rate if you compare. And when it comes to mobile phone contracts, it's a similar story. Go compare for better deals. A lot of people might not realize, but once your contract is ended, say if you've upgraded to a new phone, the latest phone, you've already paid for the handset cost. And so if you don't do anything, if you just leave your contract running, the situation might be you're just paying for the handset cost, even though you've already paid it off. So the key is to contact your mobile phone provider, see if you can get a better deal. If you want to upgrade, have a look at the best deals out there. One thing I would say though is, in this moment in time, think carefully before you decide to upgrade. You might find that your existing handset is more than capable enough, is more than good enough. Yes, the latest handset might offer some bells and whistles that your current phone might not have, but you have to think, is it truly worth it in this cost of living crisis that we find ourselves in?
No, absolutely. And a really good point as well. If you are going to call up your current provider and try and negotiate another deal, always try and be, super polite when you're haggling. That really is obviously when you get the best results. Don't go shouting and screaming at some poor customer service person. And obviously, you made a brilliant point, Myron. These deals always do have a shelf life. So if you do lock into a new deal now, write a note in your diary for when it expires, and you can then repeat that process next year.
And one more thing I want to add actually is, if you don't ask, you don't get. When you're speaking to these providers, ask them for a better deal. And some providers might be willing to give you a better deal for the sake of keeping you on their books. And so, it's important to keep that in mind when trying to haggle.
No, absolutely. I think that's so true throughout life, isn't it? If you don't ask, you don't get. Absolutely, definitely. So the next bill I think we should cover off, Myron, is insurance policies. So car insurance, home insurance, just the same principle of comparing prices and then potentially haggling if you don't want to switch. Does that still apply with your insurance policies as well?
Yeah, most certainly. Honestly, the best guidance I can offer is go and have a look at what else is on offer. And also, it's worth mentioning that not every insurer are on comparison websites. So it might pay to actually contact different insurers directly for a better deal. But also, even if you find a better deal elsewhere, it might be worth contacting your existing provider, because some providers actively undercut their rivals again in order to keep custom on their books, and so it's worth doing that. When it comes to car insurance, my understanding is the best time to search for new car insurance is between 15 and 29 days before your policy runs out, and it's a similar story when it comes to home insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good point as well, which I'm sure you'll agree with, is obviously if you are going to go to a different provider, do always check the level of cover you're getting as well, just to make sure it does actually cover everything you need. So go through them terms and conditions really carefully, obviously, before you hand over any cash. And should people as well also just be aware that if they're looking to leave kind of mid-contract, would they likely incur sort of any fees for that?
Yeah, of course. And so it's what you just said. It's important to have a good comprehensive look at your existing cover, your existing contracts. There might be early repayment charges applicable if you decide to jump ship, and it might leave you financially worse off than, say, if you would have just kept the contract and renew or move away once the contract is over. So it's definitely worth having a look at your existing terms.
No, absolutely. And something, again, write in your diaries, make a note of when all these bills when they're due for renewal, and just make sure you're getting the best price possible.
One thing I should also mention is like what I do with my insurance product is exactly what you said. I make a note on my diary, I make a note on my phone, and so every time something's due for renewal, I get a message, a week or 2 days in advance, and then I explore my options. That way I don't always just have to think. I don't have to make an active effort to remember. My friend's already doing that job for me.
That's a really good tip. And I think as well, a lot of people get quite worried, don't they, when it comes to switching. A lot of people do like to be a loyal customer, but I think, you just got to look at what options you have out there and look at what's best for you financially.
Exactly.
So one bill that we can't really haggle down, but is set to rise again in April, is council tax. So most areas in England are set to see a 5% council tax rise from April, which would take the average council tax bill to over £2,000. It's really important to check what you're paying is right. So as you just mentioned, we can't haggle down our council tax, but are there potentially ways to lower your council tax, Myron?
Yeah, well, last year we were fortunate in receiving many households, so those in council tax band A to D, received £155 rebate on council tax just to ease the cost of living squeeze on our finances. Unfortunately, such a policy is not affected this year. However, there might be ways in which some people can lower their council tax bills. So one I mentioned is, if you're a single person living in a household, you can get 25% discount on council tax. And it's also important to remember that if you're on lower incomes, might be receiving benefit on lower incomes, and there's a council tax reduction too, and that you might be able to claim. And the best guidance I give is to find out whether you're eligible, contact your local authority you can call them up, or you can go on their websites. There's lots of helpful information on those websites.
And that is, that's super important, right? Because this information is not always clear. So a lot of the time you do have to kind of contact the council first, find out what you could potentially be entitled to, because a lot of the time people don't realise. Another thing I'd like to just kind of briefly mention as well is we have seen quite a few people successfully challenge their council tax, which is if you suspect you're on too high of a council tax banding, you could potentially challenge this. and get moved to a lower down council tax banding, which would not only lower your bills going forward, but if you've been overpaying for some time, then you could potentially be due quite a lot of money back. But saying this, you do need to do your research first. There are lots of guides on Mirror Money that can talk you through this, because if it turns out you've been on too low of a banding and you get moved up, then obviously your bills will become more expensive going forward. And then this could potentially also have a knock-on effect for your neighbours as well. So again, super important to do that research. But I mean, a 5% increase in your council tax, Myron, that's huge. That's going to hit a lot of people, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's difficult to digest at a time where we're seeing expenditures across the board going up, from the food we put on our table to the amount we pay for energy. So yeah, it's important to see and to explore whether you can reduce your council tax burden, and more broadly see if you can cut spending just to help alleviate this cost of living squeeze on budgets.
No, absolutely, and hopefully that's exactly what we're going to help people do today, is just to cut as many bills as possible. So moving on next to water bills. So again, water is a bit of a funny one, because you can't change water providers, but there are ways you can still cut your bill. So did you want to kind of go through these next, Myron?
Yeah, sure. So, like, the first thing I want to bring up is water meter. Should you have one installed in your property or not?
A lot of people do wonder that, don't they?
Yeah, and the answer really is it really does depend on your usage. So the water meter charges you based on how much water you use. So if you live in a house, or perhaps if you have a big family with children who take loads of showers and does loads of washing up, all that kind of stuff, it might be worth maybe not to have a water meter installed. But if you're more conservative with your water use, then it might pay dividends to actually install a water meter. And one thing I want to actually highlight is that your water bill is usually based on the value of your house at a rateable value. So the bigger your house is, the more you pay. Whereas the water meters, again, as I said, it depends on how much you use. So these things you have to consider when making a decision whether or not to install a water meter in your house.
And is it right that the kind of general rule of thumb, obviously this won't apply to absolutely everyone, but just generally speaking, is that you might benefit from getting a water meter if you have more or the same number of bedrooms in your house than people?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
so well worth investigating that. I think another sort of really quite obvious, but also a lot of people don't realise the impact, is obviously just to try and reduce your water usage. It can be like really simple things like just showering for 1 minute less, something that's not going to really affect your lifestyle, but it's going to have a good impact on your bills. So, I think it's really important as well that these little savings do add up, right?
exactly. And that suggestion you just made can also save on energy bills, which, as we all know, is just going up at this moment in time.
Absolutely. And that actually ties us on very nicely to the next bill we're going to discuss, which is energy. And obviously this is one that's been causing huge stress for many, many people at the moment. So currently households are covered by the energy price guarantee, which has frozen bills at £2,500 a year for the typical household. But obviously it's not quite as simple as that. There isn't really a cap on how much you can pay, as what is really capped is how much you're charged for the unit rates that you're using. So your bill could be higher, it could be lower, it still all depends on your usage. But at the moment, this is really the best deal for households. There are no fixed rate deals that are cheaper than the government energy price guarantee. So how can we begin to go about reducing our energy bills?
Yeah, there's so many different ways in which we can cut down on our energy costs. As you say, this cap is a cap on usage rather than our actual bills, the bills we pay, and it's set to go up from September, this cap from 2,500 to 3,000. So it's important that we are aware of the different ways in which we can mitigate the amount we pay on energy. So we can do simple things such as perhaps cut down on hot showers. We can try and drought proof our windows and doors. We can try perhaps to monitor how often we use the oven, for example. People who like to use electric heaters, as in those you plug into a wall, that's an energy guzzler. So it might be worth having a look at reducing the amount of energy guzzling appliances you might have in the house. Even simple things such as turning appliances off standby can save on energy. So there's honestly a lot of things that people can do to reduce their expenditure on energy. But as we should all be receiving money off our energy bills through the government's energy discount scheme, which will give £400 off energy bills by the end of March. But if you are struggling with energy bills, it's important that you need to know that you do not need to suffer in silence. I think the first portal call is to contact your energy provider, discuss any money worries or issues that you might be having paying back bills with them, and they might help. They might put you on a more, generous plan. They might put you on a plan where you'll be paying back less in the immediate term to help with your financial circumstances. But there are other schemes out there that can help with your energy bill. So one thing I really want to mention is household support funds, and this was launched in September 2021 by the government to help people with cost of living woes, specifically energy bills. And so this fund is distributed by local councils to those who need it most. And so the best way to find out whether you're eligible is by, again, contacting your local authority, and they'll run you through eligibility criteria. And there's also the government. I should also mention actually that the government is introducing a fresh round of financial support for the most vulnerable from spring this year, and I think that amounts around £900 for people who are on low income benefits, and there's also £300 for pensioner households, and I think £150 for people who are on eligible disability benefits. So there is support out there. As I said, don't suffer in silence. And there are charities such as Turn to Us and Step Change who are really good at pointing people to the right direction if you're not sure what the right direction is.
Absolutely. I think, the most crucial message there, don't suffer in silence. If you need help, talk to your energy provider straight away. And I think, we covered lots of really good bits of help there, like the £400 energy rebate, cost of living payments. But I think as well, Myron, I'm sure you've seen this in the news as well. We've certainly been contacted by a load of our readers who are saying that they haven't received some of this discount, because obviously the £400 is split over 6 months, so £67 in October, November, then £68 from December through to March. And there are a few people who just said, we just haven't received it. So again, It's really important, isn't it, for people to check, because it's not always an automatic discount for people on prepay meters.
Prepay meters, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so it's important to check, and it's important to push.
I think also as well to keep an eye out on the other kind of what energy specific government schemes are available. There is, the warm home discount, which is worth £150, winter fuel payments, which should have reached all the eligible people. But again, people can fall through the cracks. It's worth checking that. It can be worth up to £600 this year, made up of up to £300 winter fuel payment and then an extra £300 on top for a pensioner cost of living payment. So again, lots of help out there, as you said, Myron. It's just people need to kind of check what they're entitled to.
Exactly.
So the final bill actually that we're going to talk about, and the other one that's been causing huge anxiety for people again, is mortgage. Mortgage rates have obviously rocketed due to consecutive Bank of England interest rate hikes. So what happens next, and what advice would you kind of give if you've got a fixed deal that's ending soon, or if you're just worried generally about your mortgage?
Yeah, it's a tough time for mortgage holders. I mean, interest rates have skyrocketed. Just to put this in context, the average 2-year fixed rate deal is now priced at around 5%, and 2 years ago that figure, the average was around 2.5%. So those people who fixed 2 years ago and are approaching the end of their deals are facing significant uptick in their monthly mortgage repayment costs to the tune of hundreds of pounds. Yeah, And so it's a struggling, it's a difficult time. And the understanding is interest rates. The only way it's up for interest rates, which hits those on variable rate mortgages linked to the Bank of England's base rates, because when the Bank of England base rates goes up, then their mortgage will go up, and vice versa. And on fixed rate deals, it's not so much of a direct correlation, because there are movements in the money markets which dictate the price of fixed rate deals. But the understanding is that fixed rate deals could also go up. So if you're one of around 320,000 holders of fixed rate mortgage and come to the end of their fixed rate deal, and this is according to official stats, stats from the Office of National Statistics, if you're one of these individuals, it's worth having a chat with a mortgage broker. It's worth exploring the deals available at the moment, because, as I said, there's a worry that mortgage rates could go up. Although this is not set in stone, but there's worry that mortgage rates could go up. So again, have a look at the different deals out there that's available. Some lenders allow you to keep applications open. So if you secure, if you've reached an agreement on a deal, that deal is valid for between 3 to 6 months, depending on the lender. So it's worth having a deal on the table, and that's reasonable. I suppose I say reasonable for this day and age, rather than not having a deal and then perhaps 6 months later you find that that same deal is more expensive. So it's worth having a look for the best deals at the moment. But when in doubt, I think the first port of call, have a word with a mortgage advisor to explore your options.
No, absolutely. And I think a really key point as well is, if you are coming off a fix, you do roll on to a standard variable rate, then that could obviously potentially be very expensive. That's what we're seeing going up at the moment. So again, very important to, as you said, Myron, to kind of look at your situation, know when your deal's coming to an end, and chat to a broker, chat to an expert who can point you in the right direction. Definitely. So now that has kind of covered all the sort of main bills that people pay, but as well as cutting costs, it's also more important than ever to make the money we do have work harder. So what should we be doing right now, Myron, to make the most of the money we do have?
Yeah, we should take a comprehensive look at our own financial situation, have a look at our monthly incomings and our monthly outgoings, start a budget if you haven't done so already. The cost of living crisis is hitting everyone across the wealth spectrum. Those, unfortunately, on the lower end of the wealth spectrum find themselves having to make starker cuts in order to maintain financial buoyancy in this day and age. So, one of my favorite piece of guidance that I often give out is, rather than making huge cuts, just a handful of areas of expenditure, make tiny cuts across a broader range of expenditure. I think it's a more palatable way of saving on costs. But if there are some things that you can give up on, like perhaps if you like coffee, for example, and your wedding's having coffee every day, perhaps it might be worth foregoing a couple of cups of coffee that you buy from your local coffee shop a week. That can save on costs. Some coffees can cost up to £5 per coffee, and that's a significant amount. Imagine saving not spend money on a couple of those a week. You can save a decent sum every month, so it's worth doing that. And it's also worth just looking at areas in which you can bolster your finances. One thing, when, for example, we are all spending more on our grocery shops, and that's just a harsh reality, but we can help mitigate the rises in the cost of food and other things by making use of club cards, for example, loyalty cards which offer discounts and vouchers, money off vouchers on our shop. So it's important to make use of those things.
And what about things like savings accounts as well? I mean, obviously that's the kind of the one good side of interest rates going up, is we're seeing savings rates rise as well. And it would be right to assume that a lot of people are probably still, their money's languishing in really low paying accounts. So is that worth people kind of looking at that and looking at where they're stashing their money?
Most certainly. I mean, during the pandemic, I had a look at my own savings account, and I realized my money was languishing in a savings account offering 0.05%. interest, which is nothing. It's pennies. As you said, there's been a reprieve in savings rates because of the subsequent, the consecutive increase in the Bank of England's base rates and interest rates more broadly. And so it's definitely worth having a look at what's out there. Because it's important to make your money work harder for you in this day and age.
Where has to sit somewhere, right?
Exactly. So definitely have a look at your savings too. As we said earlier, have a look at whether you can save on your bills, your broadband bills, your mobile phone bills. It's important to have a good look at your finance and see where you can make savings and see where you can bolster income.
Absolutely. And what are some of the best ways to make extra money right now? This is obviously something lots of people are going to be Googling right now as we approach mid-January. People have got paid early in December, the money's starting to run out. Do you have any kind of like sort of easy tips that are available to kind of give yourself a little bit of a cash boost?
Yeah, I think so. I think my first thing is have a look at your current account. I think one easy way of making money is by switching current accounts. Some banks are offering hundreds of pounds. Well, I say £100 perhaps. I think the best I've seen recently is £175 switching offer, and that's just to switch your bank account, your current account, and that's a easy way of, I suppose, getting £175. But again, you have to look at the terms and conditions to make sure that it works for you. But yeah, have a look at switching your bank accounts. There are also online surveys that actually pay you money that some people might be interested in. Some people might be interested in starting a side hustle. You might have a passion that you might realize you can make money from. I have a friend actually who who sells jams at her local fairs. She has local fairs, fairs local to her, I suppose.
I love that. Was a hobby. That's so good.
Yeah, that was a hobby, and she decided, why not try to turn it into a business? And so it's a humble hobby that's now making money for her. So if you have something similar or even better hobby that you think that you can turn into cash, then why not pursue it? One thing I should mention is that you always have to check your employment contract. Some employers don't allow you to have second jobs or side hustles, so it's important to be aware of what your current employment contract is. But there are other ways. Some people might choose to become influencers. Not that I'm recommending that. I know some people are making money that way, but I think for most people, cuts are a good way of bolstering their finances. As I said, rather than making large cuts to a small handful of areas of expenditure, maybe making smaller cuts could help save you money.
Absolutely. And just a very little sort of side note on that, if you are going to be starting up a side hustle or making money kind of regularly, obviously do check the tax implications of that as well, in case you end up owing tax for any money. So finally, for those who are starting the new year in debt, what should you be doing right now, and where can you turn to for help? And I'm sure you'll agree that the phrase you said earlier, don't suffer in silence, really apply to this.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a good overview of your debt situation, and some debt takes priorities among other debts, and so it's important to pay off the debt that has the most severe consequence first. So things like mortgage debt might be a good example. The worst one was your house could get repossessed, and so you don't necessarily want that to happen. So it's important to prioritize those kind of debts. Again, you can contact your provider to see if you're struggling with money. You can contact your provider to see if they can put you on a plan that's more palatable from a financial point of view in the short term. And the next sense is like, once you've paid off these priority debts I just mentioned, is to try and pay off the minimum amount on the other debts, so that you'll stop what you owe getting any larger, growing, I suppose, and you have to pay a large amount of interest. And once you get that in order, once that's all sorted, pay off the highest interest debt first, and then work your way down to the lowest interest debt. And And also, I shouldn't mention Zero's balance transfer cards. Yeah, it's worth consolidating your debt, your credit card debt, by transferring the balance onto a Zero balance credit card. Again, just saves on the cost of interest. And as I mentioned earlier, there's help. Don't suffer in silence. There's help out there if you want to explore different options. Charities such as I said, Turn to Us and Step Change are good places to go to if you need help.
Absolutely, really, really good advice. And again, just if you're struggling, yeah, don't suffer in silence is the key take home from that. So just because I am aware that we are coming up to our time now, I feel like that was a proper sort of bill buster session there, Myron. So hopefully that has helped a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so. I think the key is, yes, inflation. There are signs that inflation is easing, but the cost of living crisis is far from over. I mean, the Bank of England doesn't expect inflation rates to come back down to 2% until the end of 2024, and loads can happen in between. We still got the unfortunate war in Ukraine, which has inflated prices in recent history. There's loads of other factors. We have a tight labour market. Energy bills is still an issue for not just consumers but also businesses. And some businesses might choose to pass down these heightened energy costs onto consumers, which means prices for food, for groceries, could still be inflated. So it's really important to just be aware that, yes, there are support schemes out there, but most of these support schemes have a shelf life, and there is no substitute to just having a good comprehensive look at your own finances and making the necessary adjustments to make sure that you maintain financial buoyancy now, but also in the future. And also, just from a wealth point of view, those who can actually afford to save, it's worth doing so. Make sure that you maintain a rainy day fund. The rule of thumb generally is having 3 to 6 months' salaries worth for a rainy day fund. And don't lose sight of your longer-term your long-term financial goals, for example, like maybe saving to retirement, maybe trying to buy a house and all that kind of stuff. Again, if you can afford to, it might be worth exploring other options such as investments, which can, bolster your wealth over the long term.
No, absolutely, a lot to think about there, and hopefully this has put people on the right path for the rest of 2023. So thank you so much, Myron, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and thank you everyone for watching, and we will be back next week for another Cost of Living Facebook Live. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Myron.
Cheers. Thank you.